Why do so many people dream of the end of the world? Why do visions of fire, floods, earthquakes, collapsing cities, and skies torn open haunt the sleep of countless souls? These dreams come in times of crisis. They come in seasons of collapse. They come when the old order, whether inside a person or across a civilization, is falling apart. Carl Jung paid close attention to such dreams. For him, apocalypse in the dream was not a prophecy of literal destruction. It was a symbol of transformation, a symbol of death and rebirth, a symbol of the psyche itself preparing for change. The end of the world in a dream is rarely about the end of the physical earth. It is about the end of a world, the collapse of an inner system, the dissolution of an identity, the breaking of an illusion, and beyond the collapse, the possibility of something new. Part 1. Dreams of the Apocalypse in Jungian Psychology. Apocalyptic dreams are some of the most powerful dreams we can have. They shake us, they terrify us. They leave us wondering, was that only a dream, or was it a vision of the future? Jung encountered such dreams often in his patients. He also lived them himself. In the Red Book, he recorded visions of Europe drowning in blood, oceans swallowing cities, fires consuming the land. At first he feared madness. Then war erupted, and he realized his visions were not private. They were collective. They were symbols of a world about to collapse. Archetypally, the apocalypse is Negredo, the blackening in alchemy, the stage where all forms dissolve, where certainty vanishes, where the ego cannot hold. It is the death before rebirth, the collapse that makes transformation possible. That is why dreams of apocalypse often come before great change in a life. In analysis, Jung saw dreams of fire, dreams of earthquakes, dreams of skies shattering. A woman about to leave a marriage dreamed of a tidal wave destroying her home. A man entering individuation dreamed of cities burning while a new light rose on the horizon. These were not random. They were the psyche's way of showing that the old life was ending. The world of the ego was collapsing. Symbols repeat. Fire is destruction, but also purification. It burns illusions. It clears space for new life. Floods are chaos, but also cleansing. They wash away what cannot endure. Earthquakes shake foundations, but also reveal what is unstable. They force a rebuilding on stronger ground. The sky breaking open is terror, but also revelation. It means the old heavens, the old gods, the old truths can no longer contain the psyche. Each symbol carries both death and rebirth, both terror and hope. Jung taught that the unconscious always moves toward wholeness. When apocalypse comes in dreams, it is because the psyche can no longer remain as it was. The collapse must come so that something larger can be born. This is why apocalypse in dreams is archetypal. It belongs to the collective unconscious. It is not only about one person's fear, it is the ancient pattern of death and rebirth played out in the psyche. The Book of Revelation, the myths of Ragnarok, the prophecies of floods and fire found in every culture, all are expressions of this archetype. When the psyche needs renewal, it dreams of the end. When cultures need renewal, they dream apocalypse together. It is as if the collective unconscious must imagine total destruction in order to open the door to transformation. Jung once said, "We do not live in a world of mere matter. We live in a world of symbols." Dreams of apocalypse are not predictions. They are symbols. They are messages from the unconscious, telling us, your world is ending, but do not fear. A greater self waits beyond the collapse. So when apocalypse comes in dream, the question is not, is this the literal end of the world? The question is, what in me is ending? What in my life is collapsing? What must die so that something new may live? The psyche speaks in images, and the images of apocalypse are its way of showing that death and rebirth are already underway. Part 2. Apocalypse as a personal symbol. For Jung, the apocalypse was never only about the outer world. It was also an inner reality. When a person dreams of the end of the world, it is often not the planet that is ending, but a personal world, the ego's world, the life you have known, the beliefs that once held you safe, the structures that gave you identity. All of these can collapse, and when they do, the psyche imagines it as the end of the world. Consider this. To the ego, the loss of control feels like death. When the familiar falls away, it feels as though everything is ending. That is why apocalypse dreams often come in times of personal crisis, when a marriage ends, when a career collapses, when an illness strikes, when the meaning that guided life suddenly disappears. The unconscious does not show these moments as small events. It shows them as apocalypse, because to the psyche, they are that immense. Jung called this the confrontation with the shadow. The moment when the ego must face everything it has denied, everything it has repressed, everything it cannot control. The apocalypse is the image of that encounter. The world falls apart because the old identity cannot survive. The false self dies so that the larger self can emerge. This is why apocalypse dreams are terrifying. They are not polite symbols. They do not whisper. They erupt. They shake us awake. A tidal wave does not ask for permission. A fire does not knock at the door. An earthquake does not explain itself. The unconscious does not ask the ego if it is ready. It announces with overwhelming force, the old life is ending. Something new must begin. But terror is not the final word. In many dreams, after the flood, a new land appears. After the fire, a green shoot rises from the ashes. After the collapse, a new structure begins to form. The apocalypse destroys, but it also clears space. It opens the ground for something new. This is why Jung insisted that dreams of destruction carry the seed of renewal. Take, for example, a patient who dreamed of the sky splitting open, lightning shattering the earth. She woke in fear. But in analysis, she realized her old life had been built on false conformity. Her psyche was demanding change. Another dreamed of a massive fire consuming the city he lived in. It seemed terrifying. But later he realized the city symbolized his rigid persona. The fire burned it down so that a truer identity could emerge. Each dream of apocalypse was not an ending, but a transformation. For Jung, the key was always interpretation. Literal fear says, the world is ending. Symbolic understanding says, my world is ending and a new one may be beginning. This is individuation, the path of becoming whole. The ego resists. It clings to the old order. It says, I cannot lose this marriage, this job, this belief, or I will die. But the psyche knows better. It knows that the false must fall, that shadow must be faced, that illusions must collapse, so that the self, the deeper center of wholeness, can emerge. Apocalypse, then, is the image of individuation in motion. The collapse of ego's world is the necessary prelude to the birth of the self. This is why Jungians often say, when you dream of the end, look for the beginning. Do not stop at the terror. Ask what it is making space for. Ask what must die so that something new may live. Sometimes the apocalypse in dreams comes with archetypal figures. The trickster may appear, laughing as the world burns, showing that the collapse is also liberation. The Great Mother may appear, flooding the world, reminding the dreamer that destruction and creation are her two faces. The child may appear, standing radiant in the ruins, symbolizing that new life is already waiting. Each figure deepens the meaning. Each reminds us that apocalypse is not random nightmare, but archetypal drama. To dream apocalypse personally is to be invited into the alchemical process. Nigredo, the blackening. The world collapses. All is lost. Albedo, the whitening, a new clarity emerges. A light shines in the darkness. Rubedo, the reddening. The opposites unite. A new life is born. This cycle lives in the dream. It lives in the psyche. It lives in each of us. So if you dream of the end of the world, ask yourself, what in me is ending? What must collapse? What must be burned away? What illusion can no longer hold? And then, what new beginning might this destruction be preparing? The unconscious is not cruel. It is purposeful. It does not send apocalypse to terrify for no reason. It sends it to awaken, to strip away the false, to prepare the ground for the birth of the self. This is the personal meaning of apocalyptic dreams, not the end of the earth, but the end of an old self, not annihilation, but initiation. A call to let go, a call to face shadow, a call to begin again. And yet, apocalypse is not only personal, it also belongs to the collective. Entire cultures dream of the end. Entire civilizations feel the shadow rising. What does it mean when apocalypse dreams appear not only in individuals, but across humanity? This is where we must turn next. Part 3. Apocalypse as a collective symbol. Dreams of apocalypse are not limited to individuals. They also arise in the collective. When entire cultures tremble, when civilizations stand at a threshold, when humanity represses too much shadow, the unconscious erupts. It erupts not only in one person's dream, but in the visions of many. This is what Jung witnessed, and it is what we witness today. Before the First World War, Jung dreamed of Europe drowning in blood. He thought he was going mad. But when the war erupted, he understood. His visions were collective. They were symbols of an age. They were the psyche of humanity speaking through him. This is the power of collective symbolism. It is not prediction in the ordinary sense. It is resonance. It is the unconscious announcing itself through images shared across many souls. Apocalypse is one such image. It appears in myth. The Norse called it Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, the destruction of heaven and earth, followed by renewal. In Christianity, the book of Revelation shows the end of the world, wars, plagues, fire, judgment, yet also a new heaven, a new earth, a holy city descending. In indigenous traditions, there are stories of worlds destroyed by flood, by fire, by wind, only for new worlds to be born. Across cultures, the archetype repeats, collective apocalypse followed by renewal. These myths are not superstitions, they are archetypal maps. They show that when civilizations collapse, the psyche imagines it as the end of the world, and when renewal begins, it imagines a new creation. In our own time, collective dreams of apocalypse have become almost universal. People across nations report dreams of floods, dreams of burning forests, dreams of machines rising, dreams of skies black with smoke. These are not only personal anxieties. They are symbols of the collective psyche. They reflect the climate crisis, political chaos, technological upheaval. But deeper still, they reveal that humanity as a whole feels itself in nigredo, the blackening, the dissolution, the crisis before transformation. This is why apocalypse fascinates culture. Our films are filled with it. Mad Max, The Matrix, The Day After Tomorrow, Children of Men, The Walking Dead. These stories are modern myths. They are not simply entertainment. They are the collective unconscious showing itself on screen. Audiences across the world dream together in cinema. They watch their deepest fears and their hidden hopes projected larger than life. The archetypes are alive here. The flood, the fire, the collapse of cities, the hero who survives, the child of the future, the wise guide, the trickster who destabilizes, all are present in apocalyptic media. All are collective symbols rising from the unconscious. They tell us that humanity feels itself on the edge of destruction, but they also whisper that something new may be born. Jung warned that the collective shadow, if denied, will always erupt. Racism, violence, hatred, wars, these are eruptions of shadow. When they reach breaking point, the psyche imagines the end. The apocalypse is the ultimate shadow image. It says, "If you do not face me consciously, I will destroy your world." But even here, renewal is possible, for apocalypse is also revelation. That is what the word means. Revelation of shadow, revelation of illusion, revelation of the possibility of transformation. Consider climate change. On one level, it is science. Carbon, heat, storms, collapse. On a deeper level, it is collective symbol, the Great Mother rising, the psyche of humanity confronting its own greed. The floods and fires are literal, but they are also archetypal. They are apocalypse as symbol, demanding new life. Consider artificial intelligence. On one level, it is tool. On another, it is archetype. The golem, Frankenstein, Prometheus punished for fire. The fear of AI destroying humanity is apocalypse dream writ large across culture. It is the collective shadow projected into machines. The apocalypse in this form warns us, face your shadow or it will face you in code. Collective apocalypse is thus both danger and guide. It warns of collapse, but it also calls for transformation. It strips away illusions, but it also prepares the ground for something greater. If we live it unconsciously, we are consumed. If we live it symbolically, we are transformed. This is the gift of Jung's vision. He showed that collective apocalypse is not the final end. It is the pattern of renewal. It is the archetype of death and rebirth, working itself out in the psyche of humanity. The world may not literally end, but our world, our order, our consciousness, our illusions may collapse. And from that collapse, something new may emerge. So when apocalypse appears collectively, the question is not only what is ending, the deeper question is what is trying to be born. And this brings us to the final layer. Apocalypse is not only destruction, it is also alchemy. The blackening that precedes light, the night before dawn. It is the preparation for rebirth. And so, to understand the full meaning of apocalypse, we must look at what follows. The path of renewal, the vision of transformation, the possibility of wholeness beyond collapse. This is where we must go next. Art 4, Apocalypse and the Path of Rebirth. Every apocalypse carries within it the seed of rebirth. The flood destroys, and then the waters recede. The fire consumes, and then green shoots rise from the ash. The earthquake shatters foundations, and then new structures are built on firmer ground. The psyche knows this. That is why it dreams apocalypse. Not to annihilate, but to prepare. Not to end, but to transform. In Jungian psychology, this process is mirrored in alchemy. The alchemists spoke of nigredo, the blackening. All forms dissolve, confusion reigns, the old identity dies, but they also spoke of albedo, the whitening. A light breaks through, clarity appears, purification begins. And then came rubedo, the reddening. The opposites unite, a new life, a new self is born. Apocalypse is nigredo. Rebirth is albedo, and rubedo. The end and the beginning are one process. Jung experienced this himself. In his visions, he saw Europe drowning in blood, oceans swallowing cities, armies marching through fire. He thought he was losing his mind. But he also saw the child of light appear. He saw mandalas forming. He saw new symbols of wholeness emerging from the chaos. For Jung, apocalypse was initiation. It was the death of an old consciousness, so that a new one might arise. This is why, in so many myths, apocalypse is followed by creation. Ragnarok ends the world of the gods, but a new world rises from the sea. The book of Revelation speaks of plagues, wars, judgment, destruction, but also of a new heaven and a new earth, a holy city descending, where God dwells with humanity. Indigenous traditions tell of worlds destroyed by fire or flood, but always followed by new worlds, new peoples, new beginnings. The archetype is universal. Destruction leads to renewal. Death leads to rebirth. Apocalypse opens the door to transformation. And in dreams, this pattern is the same. A woman dreams of her city burning. She wakes in terror, but later she finds herself leaving an abusive relationship and beginning a new life of freedom. A man dreams of a flood covering the land. He fears the end. But months later, he realizes the dream marked the washing away of his rigid beliefs, preparing him for spiritual renewal. The psyche never ends with death alone. It always imagines renewal. The end is the beginning. The collapse is the threshold. But here is the challenge. The rebirth is not guaranteed. Apocalypse clears the space. But what is built after depends on consciousness. Unconscious, rebirth can turn into repetition. New tyrannies, new illusions, new shadows. Conscious, rebirth can become transformation, greater wholeness, greater compassion, greater self. That is why Jung said, "What is not made conscious returns as fate." If we do not live the apocalypse consciously, we repeat it. If we carry it with awareness, we are transformed by it. So how do we live it consciously? First, by recognizing it as symbol, not dismissing it as mere nightmare, not fearing it as literal doom, but seeing it as message from the unconscious. Second, by asking, what is ending? What must die? What illusion must collapse so that something truer can live? And third, by looking for the new, the child in the ruins, the mandala after the fire, the small green shoot rising through the ash. The psyche always leaves hints. It always shows that renewal is possible. On the collective level, this too is our task. Our age is full of apocalyptic signs, climate collapse, political chaos, technological upheaval, but perhaps these are not only endings, perhaps they are thresholds, perhaps they are the collective nigredo before a greater transformation. The question is, will we carry them unconsciously and fall into destruction? Or will we live them symbolically and move toward rebirth? The mandala may be the symbol of that rebirth, a vision of wholeness that can hold the opposites, that can include both shadow and light, both destruction and creation. The mandala says, you are one. Your crisis is not only death, it is also the path to self. So the dream of apocalypse is not curse, it is invitation, an invitation to let go, an invitation to transform, an invitation to trust that beyond the end is a beginning. This is the path of rebirth, not easy, not comfortable, but archetypal, inevitable, for the psyche, for cultures, for humanity itself. Apocalypse is not the final word. Rebirth is. Dream symbolism of the apocalypse. We have walked through the dreams of the apocalypse. We have seen their terror. We have seen their meaning. Jung showed us that these dreams are not predictions of doom. They are symbols. They are messages from the unconscious. They tell us the old world is ending. A new world waits to be born. On the personal level, apocalypse comes when the ego collapses, when old beliefs, old identities, old illusions can no longer hold. The psyche shows this collapse as the end of the world, and yet in the ashes, a truer self begins to emerge. On the collective level, apocalypse comes when cultures bury too much shadow, when humanity reaches crisis, when wars, climate, technology, and division tear the world apart. The psyche imagines this as collective apocalypse, but even here, renewal is possible. The archetype always carries rebirth. Death and creation are two faces of the same symbol. This is the path of individuation. The shadow must be faced. The false must die. The ego must yield. Only then can the self appear. Only then can wholeness emerge. Apocalypse is not the end. It is initiation. It is the threshold to renewal. So if you dream of fire, if you dream of flood, if you dream of skies collapsing, ask yourself, what in me is ending? What must fall away? What is the self trying to bring forth through this destruction? For every apocalypse, personal or collective, carries within it the seed of rebirth. If this journey has spoken to you, I invite you to share your own symbols. Have you ever dreamed of apocalypse, fire, flood, collapse, or end of the world? What do you feel those dreams were trying to tell you? Comment below with the images and symbols that have appeared in your dreams, for symbols belong not only to individuals, but to the collective. By sharing them, we weave a mandala together. If this video brought you insight, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who are exploring Carl Jung Shadow Work and the mysteries of the psyche. Together, we carry the symbols consciously. Together, we transform fear into meaning. Together, we step through the apocalypse into the path of rebirth.